You open your banking app on a Tuesday night, not because you want to, but because something made you feel guilty enough to finally look. And there it is, the same number that's been sitting there for months. Maybe it went up a little, maybe it went down a little, but fundamentally, honestly, it hasn't moved in a way that feels like progress. And you can't explain why. You're not irresponsible, you're not reckless, you pay your bills, you show up to work, you've told yourself 100 times that you're going to get serious about saving. And yet the account balance just stares back at you. That quiet frustration, that feeling of spinning your wheels without knowing why, is exactly what we're unpacking today. Because it's not random, it's not bad luck. It's a specific, predictable pattern that most people never identify until years have already slipped by. My name is Mark, and I spend way too much time thinking about money and the psychology behind wealth, specifically why smart, hardworking people keep losing ground no matter how much they earn. Today, we're breaking down exactly why most people never reach their first $100,000 saved, and more importantly, what's silently standing in their way every single month. If this is your first time here, welcome. So hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because this channel is where finance finally starts making sense. And once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it, because the barriers between you and $100,000 aren't what you think they are. Ever wonder why money seems to slip through your fingers no matter what? You get a raise, you feel good for about 2 weeks, and then somehow life quietly expands to absorb every single dollar of it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't fail to reach $100,000 because they don't earn enough. They fail because of a handful of invisible behavioral patterns that compound silently against them every month. The $100,000 milestone isn't just a number. Research shows it's a genuine psychological threshold. Once you cross it, your relationship with money fundamentally changes. Your decisions become calmer, your confidence grows, your options expand. Most people think wealth is about income, but it's really about psychology. Specifically, the psychology of the decisions you make between paychecks, in parking lots, at checkout screens, and on quiet Sunday afternoons. And here's what nobody tells you. The gap between people who hit $100,000 and people who don't isn't talent, it isn't salary. It's usually 3 or 4 specific habits repeated for years that nobody ever flagged as dangerous. If you ignore this one habit, the habit of lifestyle creep, which we'll get into shortly, it quietly sabotages your future every month, compounding into a financial gap you'll spend years trying to close. Think of it as a financial treadmill set just slightly faster than your walking speed. You're moving, you're trying, you feel productive, and you're absolutely going nowhere. So let's break down exactly how this works, because the mechanics are painfully simple once you see them clearly. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Saving $100,000 is not primarily a math problem. It's a behavioral problem dressed up as a math problem. And that distinction changes everything. The math is actually straightforward. If you save $500 a month, you hit $100,000 in about 14 years without any growth. With a modest 7% annual return, you get there in roughly 10 years. That's it. That's the formula. Think about this for a second. Most people who earn a decent income have $500 a month flowing through invisible lifestyle expenses, subscriptions they forgot about, food delivery markups, impulse upgrades, without ever consciously choosing to spend it. Your $12 a month streaming service isn't the problem, but the 12 versions of that — streaming, music, apps, memberships, cloud storage — quietly add up to $180 a month before you've eaten a single meal. And here's where it gets interesting. That $180 a month invested consistently at 7% over 20 years becomes roughly $109,000. That's not savings you lost. That's a whole first milestone you traded for services you barely remember using. Behavioral economists call this the subscription blindness effect. We dramatically underestimate recurring small charges because they never trigger the same psychological pain as a single large purchase. An $1,800 charge stops you cold. $1,250 charges, barely a blip. This is the financial hamster wheel in its purest form. Running hard, feeling busy, spending consistently, and arriving exactly where you started every single month without understanding why. What you're about to learn changes everything about daily spending, because the enemy of your first $100,000 isn't one big bad decision. It's 100 small, comfortable ones. Here's the trap that quietly gets almost everyone on the path to $100,000. Lifestyle creep. And the dangerous thing about it is it feels like success. You earn more, so you spend more. You get promoted, so you upgrade the car. You feel stable, so you move to the nicer apartment. Each individual decision feels completely reasonable, and collectively, they guarantee you stay exactly where you are. Most people never notice this until it's too late, that every time their income rises, their savings rate stays flat because their lifestyle immediately absorbs the difference. They never actually accelerate towards $100,000. They just run faster on the same treadmill. Here's the math that should genuinely bother you. The average American receives roughly a 3 to 4% raise annually. If your expenses grow by the same 3 to 4%, which they almost always do, your savings capacity never improves, not even slightly. And then there's the identity trap, what I call the illusion of arrival. It's the quiet belief that saving seriously is something you'll do once things settle down, once the car's paid off, once rent gets cheaper, once life gets calmer. These are depreciating liabilities disguised as stepping stones. The car upgrade, the bigger apartment, the just this once vacation on credit. And they push the $100,000 milestone further away with every single cycle. It quietly drains your potential without warning, because you're not just spending money on the thing. You're spending the compound growth that money could have earned for the next 2 decades. A $300 a month car upgrade might feel minor, but redirected into investments over 15 years at 8% return, that's $104,000. The upgrade didn't cost you $300 a month. It cost you your first milestone. Here's what most people believe. I'll start saving aggressively once I'm making more money. It sounds logical, it feels responsible, and it is one of the most reliably wealth-destroying beliefs that exists. And this is where most people completely mess it up, because income and savings rate are not the same variable, and raising one without intentionally protecting the other achieves almost nothing. Studies consistently show that high earners, people making $150,000, $200,000 a year, frequently have less in savings than moderate earners who simply controlled lifestyle creep from the beginning. That's not an anomaly. That's the math playing out exactly as designed. The person making $60,000 and saving 20% will outpace the person making $120,000 and saving 5% every single time, without exception, over any meaningful time horizon. Here's the painful truth about what everyone thinks is smart spending. We optimize for looking financially comfortable rather than being financially free. The nice car, the premium apartment, the upgraded phone, they all signal arrival. None of them build wealth. The illusion of arrival shows up here in full force. You feel like you've made it because your life looks a certain way. Meanwhile, your actual net worth hasn't moved in 2 years, and $100,000 still feels like an abstract dream. Once you see the real numbers, you'll never look at your habits the same way, because the first $100,000 isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in the 100 quiet moments when you chose not to upgrade, not to finance, not to expand. At just 5% annual inflation, $100 today is worth $61 in 10 years. If your money is sitting in a standard savings account at 0.5% interest while inflation runs at 5%, you are losing purchasing power every single month while doing absolutely nothing wrong. The only mistake is inaction. Now this is where everything changes, because reaching $100,000 isn't really about the money. It's about what the money proves to your own psychology. Before you hit that threshold, money feels fragile. An unexpected expense feels catastrophic. A job change feels terrifying. The financial decisions you make from a place of scarcity are almost always worse than the ones you make from a place of stability. After you hit $100,000, with even a portion invested in compounding, something shifts. The anxiety quiets. The decisions improve. You start thinking in decades instead of just surviving the month. This is the tipping point few ever recognize. The first $100,000 doesn't just build wealth, it builds the version of you who makes better financial decisions for the rest of your life. And the compounding effects from here are staggering. At 8% annual return, $100,000 becomes $215,000 in 10 years, without adding a single dollar. That's the power of crossing the threshold. The money starts doing the heavy lifting you used to do alone. Choosing permanent freedom over temporary pleasure isn't deprivation. It's not living on rice and skipping holidays. It's simply deciding that the version of your life at 55 matters as much as the version of your life this weekend. The psychological shift required here is real, and it's necessary. Moving from a survival mindset, where you spend reactively and save whatever's left, to a growth mindset, where you pay yourself first and build non-negotiably toward that first milestone. And suddenly, all your decisions take on a new meaning. The subscription you keep, the car you choose, the raise you either save or spend, they stop being random habits and start being votes for or against your financial future. So, here's where we land. Most people never reach $100,000, not because the math is hard, but because the psychology is invisible, and nobody ever showed them exactly where to look. You are not behind because you're irresponsible. You're behind because the patterns working against you were never labeled, never explained, and never shown for what they actually cost you over time. The survival mindset says, "I'll get serious when things are better." The empowered mindset says, "I understand exactly what's slowing me down, and I'm gonna close one leak this week." Both are available to you right now. Share this with a friend who needs to hear this, because most people are working hard and wondering why the number never moves, when what they actually need is a clearer map. Comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. What was the moment in this video that clicked for you? Was it the lifestyle creep math, the subscription blindness, or the $100,000 psychology shift? Tell me. I read every comment. And don't forget to hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who are ready to stop reacting to their finances and start building inside of them. Because the truth is, $100,000 is not a fantasy. It is a decision. Made quietly, repeatedly, in the small moments between paychecks over months and years that add up faster than you think. Which habits will you let quietly drain your future, and which will you reclaim? That question doesn't need a perfect answer. It just needs an honest one. Starting today. The people who build wealth aren't smarter than you. They just started asking better questions a little sooner. And today, you just asked one.